Welcome to Knock 'em Dead, a comedy podcast that deals with the one thing we all experience, yet never talk about: death. Episode 2, Death Doulas. Move over, birth doulas, because there's a new doula in town. Doulas aren't just for bringing life into the world anymore. They're here to help you say sayonara with grace, too. Instead of a life coach, they're an afterlife coach, the hipster version of a hospice nurse, guiding you through the most awkward exit interview of all time. Death doulas are a cosmic concierge, acting as caregivers of the soul, listeners of last wishes, and keepers of last-minute confessions. Because some of us need a referee to stop our family from getting trashed on Fireball and punching each other or us when things get stressful. This is important because you can't duck a punch in a hospital bed. Doulas create a space where the dying are heard and honored, because even in our final moments, our family still won't effing listen. Doulas also know when to hide the Jack Daniels, because Nana does get scrappy when she drinks. And if you knew you could plan to be at home with a doula instead of dying in a hospital, would you? Or are you scared to plan your own death? I'm Rachel Bradley, with my co-host, Christopher Titus. This is Knock 'em Dead. Hey, what's up, guys? It is another episode of Knock 'em Dead. I am Rachel Bradley.
I am Christopher Titus.
We are talking about something a lot of people don't know about. Certainly we had not heard of before. Death doulas. So doula was originally used to describe a midwife, somebody who would help someone give birth. And then in the 90s, someone else said, wait a minute, people are born, but they also die.
So it's like a death midwife is what you're saying.
It's totally like that.
I was looking, when I read about it and I was thinking, okay, what do we do? Like, what is this going to be? And I remember my dad died by himself in his bed all alone. We had spent a couple days with him, and I thought that's not the way to go, you know. I
think your dad chose that.
He did choose it. Because, you know, you're right. Pop would not have been like, could I get some friends in here? He'd have been like, hey guys, I'm gonna go. I'm dying. You know what he was?
Do you mind? I'm trying to die in here.
He was like a collie that just went into a closet and died.
A lot of people don't know the story. Do you mind saying?
No, no. So my dad died. So my dad had a bunch of health problems. He had 4 or 5 heart attacks.
They know that,
know that. Well, what happened was he'd gone to the doctor. He'd having this. There's a high artery in your neck that pumps a lot of blood, and the pressure is supposed to be 14. His was 145, and it's a respiratory
percent cheese.
Yeah, exactly. 145. Yeah, they said
White Russians.
They said he had they were going to do a stent in it to open it up so the pressure would drop again, and then they did an X-ray of his lungs. That we found all this out. He didn't tell. Just so you know, he told nobody this. So they did an X-ray of his lungs, and they found a mass in his lungs.
So he's going to the doctor, finding these things out, and not telling anyone.
Didn't tell anybody.
That's not a guy that would have a doula.
Yeah, and a guy who, again, like a collie in a closet. I'm gonna go die. I'm gonna leave him alone. So he and because of his heart attack, he had to sleep sitting up because his heart had so much. He was congestive heart failure. He had so much water around it that if he went down, the doctor told him, if you lay down flat, you're gonna die. He goes, your heart will drown and you will die, because it's not strong enough to pump through the water. So they found him in his bed that Saturday, all the pillows on the floor, him laid flat out. So he decided. And I was like, why would he do this? Why would he do this? And maybe he was in pain. I get it. He had a bunch of heart attacks. He was kind of weak. Wes down the street, big guy Wes, big burly dude. He said, yeah, Dad came down on Thursday and he told me that he goes, they found a mass in his lungs and quote, I ain't going out like that. So that was my dad. So
he chose how he wanted to
go. He wanted to go, which I think everybody should have the right to. I think dying, having someone force you into a hospital or an old age home is just like not cool. Like, you should, and here's what I really got with when Grandma passed. Still such a sweet memory. She was surrounded imagine this. You made it happen. You really were all over, but you're like, guys, she's going. Like everybody showed, like you were so managing.
I had seen it at that point, so I had experience with it, so I knew each step.
But what a weird phone call to make. Hey guys, it's tonight. And then everybody came over and they were singing around and I thought, there you go.
And she died in her recliner.
Yep.
She never had to get into the hospital bed, which I knew was going to scare her.
Oh, they set it up that day.
She had a sleep number bed, baby, and it was a relationship, not a bed.
Yeah.
And they wheeled that hospital bed into the dining room because we wanted to be able to still eat dinner with her, I decided. And I was so worried about transporting her into that bed that night.
Didn't we discuss that? Because I remember they came over and the guy built it, and it's such a weird thing because you think, I guess when someone's dying that you love dearly, you think everyone else should feel the same way. And this guy just came in and clank, set this bed up.
And we hid it from her. I knew with grandma, she's like a Yorkie, and she had her routines.
We've compared our people we love to dogs because we love our dogs so much.
These dogs. And I knew that the bed would be the big one.
Right.
And so it was so merciful and beautiful, and she passed away in her power chair.
Yeah.
And remember?
She died in the power chair. Yeah.
And then when the funeral home people came to get her, because I think you said, well, it is a power chair, and she had been in the chair for about 4 hours, and Chaplin, our Yorkie, was asleep with his chin on her hand, still where he always sat with grandma, and wouldn't leave her. And I think you said, well, it's a power chair. And so they just...
They stood her up. We got to get her out. It's going to be up now. The guy goes, look, maybe you guys don't want to be in here when we move her. And he was like, because we have to get her out. I go, no, just hit the... So grandma's
ejector.
Grandma would have laughed her.
Yeah, she would have. And then said, you are wrong. But with my mom, if I had said, I hadn't been through it before, I didn't know what to expect. And of course it is different with everyone, but so you really never know. But if I could have had someone like a death doula, I didn't know about those then. And that's why we wanted to have this guest on today. I talked to this guy on Zoom before, and I told him
and this isn't a hospice person.
This is not a hospice person. This is somebody who can work with hospice, comes into the home and can provide support to the patient, to the family who's grieving before the process, during and after, dealing with grief with people. Someone that's walked this walk before and is there to help the people going through it because of their kindness and compassion and experience.
Let's get him on.
And had I known someone like this, I would have been able to do things so differently for my mom. And it left me with a couple of regrets. And I told him this before. And so I really want people to know what a death doula is. We have a guest today that I'm very excited about. A multi-layered, multifaceted, very interesting, kind, dedicated human being.
And he's from New Jersey and still kind.
I know. I don't know how. Let me just tell you, his name is Matthew Dwyer, first of all. And he is a death doula, which is something people don't really know about.
So he duels death. So basically, when death shows up, he's like, I got you, death. Let's do this.
And what would a Jersey person bring to duel?
You duel death? Is that?
Oh, man, don't let me duel anything, please.
The first time I met Matt, because Matt, do you like Matt or Matthew better?
Matthew is fine, but you can call me Matt too. It doesn't matter. Unlike Titus, I'll answer to just about anything.
Well, Matthew's the reason I use Christopher Titus because Christitis sounds like something you get vaccinated for, which is one of the first jokes I ever wrote. So so if you're gonna call me Chris, gotta call me Christopher because Chris is just weird. But yeah, Titus is fine. Matthew, I like Matthew, the formal Matthew.
When I first met Matthew, I met him on Zoom, and I actually thought, did he pay for the Buddhist Zoom background? Because it's so perfect.
Well, I don't want to disappoint anybody. I'm not Buddhist.
I thought you were Buddhist.
No, I'm a independent contractor.
Independent religious contractor.
Okay.
I am what we would say is a bhakta or a bhakti. It's a yogi.
Oh, Hindu. More Hindu. There you go.
Yeah, but even then, like, I wouldn't feel right calling myself a Hindu because there's all these, sort of formal things, and there's different streams. I have Indian teachers and I have Western teachers. So I have a yoga practice.
So I met you through my uncle, Philip, who calls you his Buddhist doula friend. So we might need to speak to Philip about generalizations.
Yes, there you go. Especially because he's Jewish. I think we should specifically speak to him about generalization.
That's a good point.
He would have a little more insight. So I just read about doulas. I was it's interesting because we've been through a couple of situations where when Ray took care of her mom, and the hospice care people were great. But doula is such an interesting need to have someone there emotionally at the worst, the worst time of your life.
Matthew, do you mind explaining what being a death doula is to you?
I mean, I love what Titus was saying because sometimes people will say, oh, well, I have hospice. They're working with the family. So why do we need a doula? But a doula is going to bring another element or another layer into what might be a really chaotic environment.
Yeah.
And, what I heard you saying a little bit is sometimes a doula can come in and just be a grounding presence, a presence that's, there to witness and, provide some practical things, but also just provide, I don't know if people are listening or watching, but I'm like taking my hand and pulling it down a little bit just to be grounded.
Yeah.
And because we have a soul, whatever we want to call it, about to leave. And, what does that do to the family? I mean, the family might be, sad or chaotic, or might be a lot of anger floating around. There's all kinds of things when you walk into the room of someone who's dying. Right. So as a doula, I walk into these spaces, and I mean, thankfully, because of my yoga practice, Philip.
I think, can I just tell you that I think the contact that he shared with me says Buddhist doula. We're going to have to talk to him.
It's interesting. It's not just for what I got when I was reading it it's not just for the person that's dying, but man, the family. People get funerals and weddings are two places where just the weirdest, I've never seen behavior from people you think to funerals and weddings. And funerals are really worse because everybody, whatever guilt life comes through, and a doula seems to be someone that actually helps manage that, helps. Almost like a sounding board, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, and just someone that's there to support. Like every doula has a different set of skills that come to the table. And if you speak, and I'm sure you'll speak to other doulas that provide something a little bit different. But
like Monopoly, some guys will play Monopoly with the person that's dying. Maybe their last thing is, I want to play Monopoly. You would jump in on Monopoly. You'd be like, what? All right, I'm going to be the race car, and they're like, I'm dying. I'm going to be the race car. That's how that goes.
If Grandma wants to play Monopoly, I'll be more than happy to play Monopoly.
Go. But you would
Sometimes
not.
I used to take cards and see if people wanted to play cards. But when it gets. Sometimes what I'll notice is when it really gets towards the end, people just want to be loved. They want you to sit with them. Sometimes it's just sitting next to someone and gazing out the window with them. We're holding their hands. We're telling. I mean, and Bullock, you two have done this because I've heard so much about. Rachel, the couple experiences that you had.
Did Philip tell you I was a Catholic?
Yeah, just tell him he's got everybody's religion wrong.
Is this a right thing or a wrong thing?
It's all good. Tell me, would I have hospice and a doula?
Would you have hospice and a doula?
Yeah.
Sure, totally. And I would encourage people who, if people are listening to this and someone in their life is terminally ill, get as much support as you can. So get hospice care if you can. Hospice will go to your home.
Yeah.
Sometimes hospices will have volunteers too that will provide company with the dying.
But sometimes hospice doulas. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. Oh. So it seems like hospice. We've had experience with hospice, and I have had where it's a little more clinical. Whereas a doula, like the one thing you need, look, the clinical is kind of over at this point. Really, you're just managing what's going wrong at that point. Doulas actually tap into the spiritual and to get you to take you to the next thing and help the family through losing someone's important. It's such a good thing when you see. Yeah. I think you have to have. As I was reading it, I realized you have to have both. So because you're not going to handle it well when I go.
I'll be fine. I told you this before, but the first time I experienced it, my mom had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and we had 2 amazing years. And when it was time, hers was very prolonged. She would not let go. And well after, her body had failed, and it was a horror show. And the hospice here in California were awful. They were rude. And if I would try and lean over my mom, I had been her caregiver all this time, and just to kiss her or whisper in her ear, there was one lady that actually put her hand between me and my mom and told me to stop. I think it had something to do with they're afraid you're going to give the morphine to them or something. I had a better experience with hospice in North Carolina. They approach it very differently, but I have thought many times if I had someone like you who could have helped me walk through that, helped me not lose my shit on that hospice nurse and cause problems there, to help me know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. I think maybe that's something else that you do for the family as well.
Yeah, providing support for the family. I can't make you not lose your shit, but I can maybe give you some tools for when there is shit about to come out. I don't know. But Titus, like coming back to what you're saying too, is like, I can't fix anything.
Right.
So this person in front of me is dying.
Right.
And the medical community, they're getting better with this, but it's still got a ways to go where death is looked at as a failure.
Right.
And why? Everything we've ever known dies. Like people don't even like saying death and die and dead. And, it's like, don't say that. We can make it happen sooner. But come on, how many people sit around all day and, think about winning the lottery?
Right.
How many people are actually winning the lottery? Or how many people are rich? Right. Yeah. So it's like if having these conversations, and I applaud you. I see a pat going on. What's happening?
He buys Powerball every week, baby.
I am a lottery winner in the future.
I just want you. Are you serious?
Oh no. In the future, trust me. It's out there for the universe.
It's on his vision board.
Yeah, it's all the time. I'm a lottery winner.
All million Powerball tickets he's purchased.
But
hey,
what's the weirdest?
I get it. I'm from New Jersey. I play the lottery too.
There you go. What's the
You got to find out how he got into it first.
People lose their shit. Yeah, I want to find out. People do lose their shit. Like you lost your shit because that woman was accusing you of possibly be about to murder your mom. So you were entirely valid to lose your shit. You were fine.
Thank you.
One, and I would if I had been there, I'd have been like, no, let me hit her because she's accusing you of trying to kill her mom. But go ahead. Yeah, how did you get into it?
It's quite a story. Rachel was cued because she heard the lottery And and that's funny. It's kind of how it started. I was traveling the U.S. in a camper van with my dog Dracula, the little black Brussels Griffin.
You totally look like a dude that's traveling the U.S. in a camper van entirely.
Yeah. And Dracula looked like me. He has the beard and dark hair. And so we're in this 70s style camper, and we were staying in Taos. Like our plan. Like he was totally on board with this. To travel the U.S. and pilgrimage the U.S. And we went to Taos, and our guru's ashram is in Taos, Neem Karoli Baba. Same guru of Ram Das and Krishna Das and Bhagavan Das and all those folks. If people are listening, they know. So anyway, I was there for a month, and one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just kept repeating death doula. And I was like, what the fuck is this?
Wow.
I don't know what this is. And I was trying to go back to sleep, but it was hooked in me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next day I called my teacher. His name is Harshada. And I said, Harshada, I don't know what the heck is going on here, but I can't stop thinking about this. And he's a beautiful man. And he says, let me get back to you. So the next day he calls me, and he said, when we go to India in January, it was the summer at this time.
Right.
He goes, when we go to India in January, we'll go to the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta, and you could volunteer with the sisters that are working under Mother Teresa's organization.
Wow.
And so I got off, and I must have looked so disappointed because I was raised like in this sort of Catholic New Jersey Italian thing, and I didn't have any interest in doing that kind of work. I also didn't want to go back to India because I had just gotten back. But our guru had other plans. So this upcoming, the weekend that there was a big festival, 3 days. It's a big bandara. There's like lots of singing, lots of chanting, lots of eating, cooking, and hundreds of people. And at the end of the 3 days, they were doing a raffle. So here's the lottery. And I wasn't working. I had very little money. And I thought, okay, there's $20. It goes to the building the new temple, the new mandir. And I said, all right, I actually said, I'm from New Jersey. How can I not play a raffle?
Right.
There goes my $20. And anyways, the very end of the weekend, they were like, all right, we're going to call the winners of the raffle. And as soon as they said that, I thought, oh, I'm going to win. I had the feeling I'm going to win. And I thought that I was going to win the third place prize because it was a blanket. Our guru used to always wear these blankets because he would have his ashrams up in the north.
Right.
And people would always give him these blankets. So I thought, Baba's going to hook me up. He knows I'm traveling in this van. I don't have a blanket. I'm freezing at night. And then they reached in to pull out the winner. And I thought, oh no, Baba's going to give me the second place prize. Because the second place was a thread in a necklace of one of his personal blankets. He's since left the body in the 70s.
Right.
So there's not a lot of these going around. And he sometimes was a bit of like a trickster. He would mess with people a little bit. So I thought, Baba, oh, really? So they reach in and they mess around and they pull out a ticket and they say, the first place winner for a round trip ticket to India is Matthew. They didn't even say my last name. And I just thought, oh, Baba. So I essentially got, we say jowed out of the ashram. I got kicked out. And I went off, sold all my camper van, and I brought the dog Dracula back to Jersey with me. And so I ended up in India for 3 months, and I still was unsure. I'll wrap it up. I still was unsure.
Take it. Trust me, we've had guests on. You're fine.
I've threatened him. He knows. He knows the deal.
I was still unsure of going to Calcutta. And I was up in Kenchidam.
Yeah, they don't have a sandals there. They don't have a sandals resort there in Calcutta. I get it. It's like, and you
There's
just
probably not a sandals.
and you just come back too. So you were like, I got to go back. Like, I get it.
Yeah, it's an intense place. And so now I'm up in the hills, and I was staying in this little village, and no one really spoke English that well. And there was one man. He was a little bit younger than me. And he happened to stay at the same place that I was, a little tiny, it was someone's home. And he told me that he had been traveling for a full year, all around the whole world. And I said, all right, you've been traveling for a year. It was like he was wrapping it up. He was in India for another month. I said, what was the most influential or special thing that you've done? The whole world. And he looked at me and he said, brother, I don't know how I ended up there, but the Mission of Charity in Calcutta. And I just was like, oh, geez, Spirit was so good to me.
They were after you, man.
Yeah, because, I can be pretty dense sometimes. It's like a part of me, if Uncle Philip thinks I'm this like, Buddhist, sure. But there's another part of me that is a little thick-headed.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting away with it that year.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah, I eventually made my way to Calcutta, and people have all kinds of mixed opinions about the work that the sisters do there. And they're hardcore. They are hardcore in the work that they do.
Right.
And regardless of how people feel about the Catholic Church, I have my opinions of that too. But these women are giving people a place to be loved instead of dying in the middle of the street.
Right.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot in more recent years with people being rehabilitated. But again, Titus, it's like you were saying, the man that has tuberculosis and HIV and been living on the streets for his whole life, he might have never had like someone feed him food before and tell him that he was loved. And, that's what I went there to do. And, there was some great, mentors that I had while I was there. And I mean, I can talk for hours about some of my time there, but so that was what I like to say, my calling and my initiation into death work.
And you're not saying that figuratively. One of the first, maybe the first, or one of the first people that you were with as they died was someone who had tuberculosis and HIV, right?
Yeah.
So that was sort of your baptism into being a death doula.
I mean, we can look at anything with like the eyes of a critic, and we can also look, or really feel from our heart. And I just say that because I know you guys have a big platform, and people might, they're tuning in and they're hearing some, man from New Jersey talk about like holding someone's hand while they die that they didn't know. But, people just want a few things when they're dying, and they want to know if they were loved. They want to know if they were able to love. So, that's part of my job.
And it's such a weird time for the family too. And the person that's dying is going through it, and that you're there for them. But I know there's a lot of people, and part of the reason Ray wanted to do this podcast is so many people have so many stories about what death means, and some of them just go, "Nope, I'm not." And they stop showing up, and they don't. And so and some people can only take it for a very short time because they're going to come apart, or they feel like it's like I've seen people get angry, and I've seen people get silly. Like, it's just weird.
It's surreal.
And for you to take up some of the slack, for a doula to take up some of the slack and literally give the family a break. And I know that sounds, look, we know you love the person dying, but I remember Ray, you, oh my God, it was so, a doula would have helped during Mom.
My first experience with Mom, that was the first time I saw how people reacted to death. I never thought that there was an alternative. This woman gave me life. This woman took care of me, fed me, changed me, gave me a roof over my head, gave me love. Of course, there was no alternative. And I was really shocked and angry to see people make the exact opposite choice. I was mad. And the second time around with my grandma, I heard myself on the phone with him. We were talking about family that just flat out wasn't showing up. And I remember saying to you, hey, everyone is on their own journey. And I thought, I'm on my way.
And I was like, who the hell is this? This is not somebody I know.
I'm becoming non-Buddhist enlightened. I have a question.
I think you have the wrong number.
Yeah, exactly.
What have you done with Rachel?
Everyone is on their own journey, and there's no right or wrong, I don't think, anymore. I'm interested in what you said about the end. People want to know that they were loved, and they want to know that they loved. How, in your experience, does that happen? How do you communicate that or make that present with that person, especially if you don't know them?
Well, it's a great question. Most people at the end, they're not asking how their stock portfolio is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
They're not I haven't seen that happen, right? But they're not worried about, at that point, they're not worried about their career.
Right. So
we put a lot of emphasis on, and rightfully so, right? Like some people they really want to be successful and have, beautiful, luxurious lives. And I think that's incredible. But at the end of it, and when you sit there and because you could do this right now. You could just imagine where are you in your life? Right. And you could just if we would do this as a practice too, you can write a little line on a piece of paper and mark where you think you are in your life. And, most people, depending on their age, will kind of go in the middle or, start creeping up, towards the later half. Right. And most people will be right if they look at that. But then move that tick all the way to the end. And then just imagine you had days, if not hours, left to live, and you were still conscious like we are now. And you could just think what is really important to me? So I would even ask you to, because as I'm talking, I imagine, part of you is thinking of another question to ask, or part of you is also doing that, that exploratory thing of whoa, what would be important to me at the end?
Do you know what's interesting for me? I had this.
I think he's asking you. You don't.
I am. I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him what happened yesterday. So yesterday, because I knew this was coming up, and I was thinking about death a lot, and I'm not thinking about it in a way. Grandma eased me. Watching Grandma die while I played guitar with her was just one of those things that. And my grief is sweet, by the way. My grief is sweet for her. But I was thinking that, because I can't, when people go, what are you going to say in your last moment? I can never conceptualize that. Yesterday I said, you have 1 year and that's it. What are you going to do
He
today?
came home and said this.
I go, because I can never conceptualize what are you going to think of at the end of your life. But you have 1 year. What are you going to do? Who are you going to love? Who are you going to cut out because they don't help? Who are you going to fix it with? And I decided yesterday before that I was going to do that. It wasn't the death doula chant in my head, but it was something like I've given myself a year, and then I have a list because I live like there is no end.
Yeah.
And now that I'm with grandma and mom, there's an end. My dad died. My dad passed, and so there is an end. So I'm living like that now. I'm kind of like, well,
I came home from my grandma's, and once you have assisted someone, especially someone in your family, through death, and you're left with what's left, it changes your perspective. And I came home from North Carolina heartbroken and wanting to get rid of all of my things. I had this desire to just get rid of stuff. I started doing Goodwill bags and selling stuff. And because what I was left with when they took her physical body away was a house full of stuff that some people wanted to fight over, or, and it was just stuff, and it was hard to go through, and there weren't enough places for it. And you're giving things that she loved to some charity, and you just really get the absurdity of this. I always tell him it's our empire of shit, or our empire of dust. We stand on top of this hill of shit that that's what's left. And so I do get that concept, and then time passes and I get caught up in dumb things again.
Sure.
Sure.
It's remembering.
Does that remind you all? I mean, but does that being a death doula, that would remind you every time what's important. So you must live in this different conversation.
Yeah. Well, the truth is, it's not like every single day I'm sitting with someone who's dying. Right.
I'm
oftentimes having this conversation, and Titus, I want to say, one, I saw that moment of sweetness when you touched your heart. I just want to call that out. Because I saw you were talking about grandma, and you touched your heart, and you had like a little sweet or grief bubble kind of show up.
But I'm not afraid of grief anymore. It used to feel so bad. Now I know that's just love trying to. It's just love.
Yeah.
I read that grief is love without a place to go anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And our what is our love want to be expressed, right? So when we grieve, we're just expressing love in so many different flavors. And there's also a book. It's called A Year to Live, I'm pretty sure, by Stephen Levin. Hope I'm pronouncing their name right. And it's doing that same work that you're saying, hey, I have 1 more year to live. So I would grab the book, and it's a really powerful book. I've done that practice before.
Well, it really in 1 second focused me. There was 2 things that happened. Oh shit. And okay. That's why when people, I can never conceptualize that you're going to die in 2 days. I can never conceptualize that, because I think at that point it should be over. I should accept it. But if I have a year and I get to be this guy, but then at the end of that year, it's over. It really pinpoint focused me on what was A, what was important, B, what needed to get done, C, what I needed to fix, and D, what I needed to let go of. It was so fast. So I'm going to get that book. That's great.
Yeah. And then let's have a conversation in a year.
Okay.
I'm going to put it in my calendar.
Yeah, you know what? I'll mark it down.
He's going to hold you accountable.
No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself an alert every month to see where I am, and I'm going to do it for a year. That's great. I'm doing that. Yeah. Because don't forget it, because it's easy. It's easy to have a day of inspiration and a month of
getting caught up
of ordinary. So you're right.
We're not going anywhere, but I do want to say this before I forget that Matt has a website. It's Madhu Matt. Madhu Matt.
Madhu.
Okay, for everyone else,
Madhu.
It looks like Mad, HUMATT.
Mad
it's
home.
Madhu Matt, madhumatt.com. And you can go and see what Matt's up to. Matt is up to a lot of things. It explains death doula. And so death doula is actually I love how you break it down on this page, that it is a before, during, and after process. So before, as he says, never too early to start the conversation, works with hospice, heart-centered companion. I know you talked about this, but the lady that you told me about, that the family would leave her in her wheelchair outside. Do you remember that?
So I was working.
Sounds like my family.
Volunteering for hospice.
Okay.
What happened? What I missed?
He said it sounds like his family.
I know, it sounds like my family. Just park him outside. Let him go.
He talks a lot. Still.
This family was so sweet. It was actually this woman was getting a treatment, and when she was done with her treatment, the bus would drop her off. But because everything is like licensed and there's all these regulations, the bus driver wasn't permitted to push her up the steps inside. So if nobody was there, that's it. It's just like grandma in a wheelchair.
I just picture this poor lady sitting on the curb, and then
why does grandma always have a sunburn?
The bus just pulling away from this poor old lady in front of the steps. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's just, by the way, my comedy is all about the absurdity of life, and that's such an absurd thing.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, totally absurd. Because somewhere along, who knows, someone decided that would make that person
liable.
Accountable.
Yeah.
So, now we have to get insurance on this. And it's like, oh, Jesus. Just wheel them up the fucking steps.
Just get the old lady inside, for God's sake. Exactly.
Pretend you didn't. She won't remember.
Right. She's not at
Sometimes you gotta do what you
gotta
do.
What's the weirdest? Okay. Do you get requests? Like people go, you know what I'd like to do before I die? Do you get weird requests? I don't mean like weird, like sexual or weird. I mean like odd, like people who had a certain life, and then like you hear because at the end of your life, you're going to come up with I would like a deep secret, a something that you were like, I always wanted to, and I never did. Do you get that a lot?
Yeah. So there's two ways to look at that. Like one of my teachers, she would say, even if someone has a request that they can't, like if they're like, hey, I want to go to Puerto Rico next week, and they're bed bound.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Let's make that happen. Because you don't want to break their hope. So one of my teachers would say that. If we talk about, a request, a dear friend of mine, I'm filtering how much of this is anonymous.
Good. Keep it anonymous. We don't want to get sued like the guy with the bus driver thing.
Yeah. He was doing not so great, and he had a moment of excitement, and he got a little rambunctious, and he is a bit of a wild man, and he had his friends take him out and did a bunch of whippets, and like
awesome.
I mean, I don't know how much of the whippet he actually did. And it was like another romp in the city. And why not?
Yeah, Rachel talks about the rally a lot. Was that his rally? Was that his like
that? Yeah, that was probably I'm trying to think like timeline with that friend. And that was definitely a couple weeks, I believe, of like, whoa, here we are. We've got a different energy right now.
If people don't know about the rally, we're definitely going to be talking about it on another episode specifically, but everybody's is different. And some people may not have it. Some are short, some are longer. They happen at different times, but it is an energetic surge that happens when someone is dying. I had a guy tell me in Montana, he said that his mom was bedridden, horribly ill, hadn't spoken, got up and said, man, I'd love a burger from whatever her favorite burger place was, and sat in the living room with the family. And of course she couldn't eat much of the burger or whatever. But the thing is, a lot of times people think they're getting better and then they die. My mom had already advanced to a physical place where she wasn't able to get up or speak well. Her jaw had released, and but she said I was the only one that could understand her. She got up. Didn't get up the night before my brother came and got me when the rally started, and he said, "I think she wants you. I'm not sure. I think she wants you." And I went to her and she looked at me and smiled. And it was the first time in some time that I saw connection there. And she, without being able to fully use her mouth, her jaw, she formed the words best friend. Uh-huh. And I said, best friend. And she went, yeah. And then she was so happy that I understood her. And then she turned her head and looked up at the ceiling and just smiled. And then in the morning, I went back to sleep. I woke up and she was still in it. My brother had been sitting with her throughout the night, and she said, "What's for breakfast?" And so, and I think she died a day after that, I think.
So your job, so because interesting, because I can see people in the family going, "Oh my gosh, they're getting better. They're turning. It's gonna get better." Do you have to explain to families like, okay, well, this is what's happening?
I can.
Yeah.
It depends like where I am or how often I'm there. You know, sometimes, you know, I'll just be there like for, you know, almost like phone support. Like someone will call me like, "Hey, this is going on." And I don't ever want to tell someone something that is like a definite, because I don't know.
Right.
Some people, I mean, miracles happen.
Yeah. Some
people have that little bounce up, and then, you know, with it, they
come out of it.
You know, they're on a track of recovery.
Wow.
So I don't ever like to say anything is for sure. I mean, unless it's like, you know, unless it's a thing where someone is not understanding that someone is dying.
Right.
You know,
That's got to be a tough one.
You might have to be a little bit, and it depends. Like, it might be a thing if like one of the family members doesn't want to admit that someone is dying, but someone else does, and there's a lot of you know, pushback from, you know, maybe I don't come into that space.
Right.
But are you I mean, I'm sure you've had to, but I mean, it's weird how people, again, funerals and weddings, people lock something down. They're not dying. They're going to be fine. And it's going to Calcutta and being with Mother Teresa. I know she was very known for not being subtle. I know she was known for not being, she called it as this is how it is. So do you have to do that sometimes, or is it just not your place to step in?
It's good question.
Oh, man.
I will put my finger on the pulse. Usually I'm trying to be as real as I can with someone. I'm not trying to do this like bright siding and, well, maybe they can get better. That's not what a good doula, I believe, should do.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, they have cancer. You know, it's like when sometimes if you say those sorts of things, or like, you know, that is because they are dying. Even just to say the words dying, and naming what it is, it can be helpful for people, because sometimes they won't say it. You know, like we were talking about earlier, they don't want to say these things.
That's what we're trying to solve with this. We're trying thank you for coming on here, because this is what we're trying to get people to realize, that it's just dying is not the end of life. It's part of life. So that we want to get that. That's what I got with Grandma. I really got, my dad tore me up bad. I didn't understand it. I was really hateful. Mom, watching you go through with Mom, being with Mom and watching how long it took was brutal. And then with Grandma, there was, I don't know, man, there was I guess it's just a sweetness in the experience. And we knew, and we didn't have, you know what I didn't have? She was 89. We didn't have a lot of, this is out of the blue.
But with her, it kind of was,
Well,
because she just flew on a red eye by herself to Scotland in August to see us for a week. So, but at the same time, it was a life fully lived. I think with my mom, we felt like we were cheated. With your dad, he was 58. He felt cheated, even though there aren't guarantees. We have an expectation, which never ruins your life.
Right. No, your expectation's great. Helps you so much.
Matthew, if you could give advice to people pertaining to their own death and advice to people pertaining to the death of someone they love, what's the top things that come to mind?
What do people need to know?
So your own death, I would say, is our life wants to be lived fully. I'm not saying just like as a bumper sticker.
Right.
Because we could do that too.
We've always ordered the t-shirts.
The reason why we can do this work and you're bringing this awareness to folks is so if we look at our precious life, we can actually be living it. I know that we're all living, but some people, I forget who said it now. It's like they are, it's suicide in installments, like little by little by little by little by little.
Existing is not living. Existing is not living.
Yeah. And I also want to say, because sometimes people listen to these podcasts and it's like, oh, okay, well, so what does that mean? Do I got to go live in, a tropical country? That's not what that means. It could mean you just go outside and just sit on your steps and watch the thunderstorm. Or look at the person next to you and you could just say, how are you? And let that person say how they are. I'm not doing well. And then you don't have to do anything. You can just be with them. And we're so uncomfortable with I hate to say negative emotions, but sadness or shame or rage or anger or, whatever. You can pull up an emotion wheel right now and go to all the things that we push away.
Right.
It's not just on level 10 all the time.
Right.
All right. To just be fully alive as best as you can. And I say this too, as a total work in progress.
Right.
And we were saying earlier, the word remember came up, and it's there's a constant remember for me. It's I constantly have to remember.
Yeah.
Okay, this is and it's not a neurotic kind of thing. It's actually the opposite. It's bringing, Ram Dass would teach us this all the time, to go from here to here.
Right.
If people are just listening, I'm going from my head to my heart, from my head to my heart. And you had a second part of that for folks that are, it sounds a little bit like folks that are grieving.
Are in the process of someone they love dying.
Your grief is sacred. And how you are feeling, whatever it is valid. If it's sadness, if it's joy, if it's anger. And we could honor both our loved one or beloved, if it's a pet. We could honor them by being with it is that we're feeling and then working with that. Some of the work that I do with folks, a lot of the work that I do these days is with folks who are grieving.
I was going to mention that's also on your website, and you call it grief walking.
Yeah, I don't know what else to call it.
I know
Nobody
like
gets over Zoom these days.
I
I would love to go out in the forest with someone and walk side by side. So we're all, taking in what's going on, and people can just share their sweethearts.
It is a journey, though. It is a walk, even if it's on Zoom, because having been through it, each day can be unrecognizable to the day before as to where you are in it, how you feel about it. And man, it is surprising. Even now, we lost grandma in March, and she was my best friend. She used to tell me I needed to get a life if my 89-year-old grandma was my best friend. But she was, and it was 2 days ago. I'm fine. I've been fine. And I opened my coffee drawer, and there was this trivet that she and I got at this. She always made me go to, I always said they were COVID super spreaders with her church, and it was called the Painted Bowl in her little town. And she wanted to go because you got free soup.
My soup you can eat.
It's much soup, you can unlimited soup. And it was for charity. And then you got to pick out a piece of pottery that the college art students made. And I saw this piece of pottery and I just lost it. And I've been fine. Air quotes. And so it's surprising.
Yeah. And partly what you're saying, Rachel, is like, you're sharing this beautiful story about you and your grandmother, and creating memories, and and really inviting her presence into your studio, into my home now. And now everyone else that's listening, it's like they now have a little bit of a relationship with your grandmother.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's just so incredible. The other day I was cleaning out my drawer too, and I saw, Dracula died in November of 2021. And I saw his little harness.
Ugh.
And I was just dropped to my knees.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I thought, Dracula. But then I look at his photo other times, and it's like, I want to tell stories about him.
Yeah.
People are like, you're still talking about your dog. It's like,
yeah.
But going back to this, this moment of grief, can I share a story?
Yes,
okay?
Please.
When Dracula died, and let me say this for anyone that's listening, if you are grieving a pet loss, that love is real.
Yeah.
Love is real, and we grieve what we love. So we never have to disenfranchise our grief. So we don't have to think, it's just my pet lizard. I just met a man that was talking to me about his dog died, and now he has this bearded lizard. And he said, the lizard follows me in and out of all the rooms, like hops up on my lap. And I mean, our relationships are so complex. And if you are dropped to your knees about anything, that's valid. You don't have to shame that. So Dracula was just this beloved dog. I was traveling the US with him. I flew all over the place with him. He was like my sidekick. Where there was me, there was Dracula. People would know him.
Right.
I'd be walking down the street and I'd be like, hey, Dracula. And people would turn and look. They'd be like, is that Dracula the dog? And I'd be like, yeah. And they had no idea who I was. So, it was not long after he died. And I also teach yoga classes here in New Jersey. And one of my students came up to me and they said, I'm so sorry. They're being very sweet. I'm so sorry. And I was just like, I'm heartbroken. Like, how are you? I'm heartbroken. Right. And you could, if we paused, I know it's like the worst thing to do for a podcast. I'm not going to do it.
No, it's fine.
But if we just like heartbroken and put our hands on our heart, we can like sit in that silence of being heartbroken. We've all been there. But what happens? Then it might take someone else into their heartbreak. Mm-hmm. So we will immediately say something to get out of that.
Right.
And this student was so sweet, and they didn't know what to say. It was that pause, like point something of a second. you have another dog, right?
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh, and you're so sweet. I wanted to hug her and be like, you sweet. But, I was a little bit angry too.
Yeah.
But it's like, because we just don't know what else to do. We're so
Right.
fucking, we hate being uncomfortable. It's like, get me out of my skin.
Yep.
Get me out of this room. I don't want to be sad. He's like, I see him. He's about to cry.
But you have another dog. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. But you know what?
And that's because again, it's like you were saying, Titus, it's like, it's kind of, it's like,
absurd.
we can't just be with it.
Right.
And the same thing. And it's like, if there is laughter that comes up, because I've been around people when there's some, something happens and there's laughter, that's normal too.
Yeah.
It's a normal emotion to have.
When my father died, he was such a wild man. Like you said, your friend was, and he was a wild man. And he used to say about his funeral, he said, I put it in one of my shows. This is a quote. I want to be buried in a cardboard box. Don't buy anything. And he goes, I want to be put on the floor, and anybody who I pissed off in life, let them step up and take a piss right on me. And then he goes, and then when the service is over, I want to be cremated. Then I want you to put me in a douche bottle, find a hooker, and run me through one more time. That's my dad. So at his funeral, I told everybody, I said, this funeral will not be, we can all grieve, but everybody's going to get him to tell a funny story about that, because everybody had something. And man, we laughed so hard. And I think we honored him for that, and I think everybody, right. Everybody has this thing and that's another thing with families, is that everybody has, the funeral's going to go this way. Like my sister, my brother, we could have used a doula because there was a constant management of what everybody else wanted with this person's death. Is that something you deal with? And also, do people have, like, what's a through line through people dying? Regret? Is that a through line through people dying pretty much? The reason I'm asking is so we can tell everybody else, if everybody else regrets this, and this, maybe we should stop. If you know what I'm saying, you have a blueprint for what people regret at the end of their lives, and then we don't have to do that.
Help us.
Usually those regrets are, you could probably just Google it, right?
Yeah.
It is the thing of like not spending time with our loved ones.
Yeah.
Being so focused on one thing that I wasn't present with the people that really cared about me, or I never actually let myself develop those really deep relationships because I was too busy wrapped up in something else.
Okay, good. Yeah. So basically, that breaks down to, I regret I didn't love enough. That's basically what it breaks down to.
Love.
Yeah.
I think when we were talking about honoring your dad, we did that with my mom. I wrote stand up for her funeral, and he did stand up as well. And my mom was an artist and big as life, and laughed and danced in public and would belt out a song in the middle of a store, and she lived big, and we wanted to honor her that way. And it was interesting because, like you said, we had family that then I start getting phone calls like, oh, so-and-so is saying that you disrespected the church and disrespected your mother. And, it's like everybody has their rules about death. It's so interesting. And one thing I would say to people that I've learned is make your wishes known now. Mm-hmm. And lock it in some way that it's witnessed, or in some official way. My grandma told me very specifically, she wrote her own funeral service and had to keep editing it because everybody keeps dying. I've killed 3 preachers. I'm afraid to put another one on there. That's what she told us in Scotland at tea. And the pianist is dead too. But while we were together in February, she wrote it again and called the people to tell them what their parts were. One person got axed.
She did.
But she called that person and said, "You're out." But she had told me a year and a half ago, I want to die at home. That's what I want. And I want you to follow my funeral service and don't say anything about my driving. Those were the 3 things she said. And I very quickly got my sister. We were all visiting Christopher and her husband and said, come into this room. And I said, I want you to repeat that again in front of all of these people, because there are other family members that would often say that for whatever surgery or whatever, we could put her in a nursing home to, she didn't want that. And so I had her say that so that when the time came, we were able to sit in front of hospice and witness that this is what she wants.
We were like the death Avengers.
Yeah. Oh,
we were like, this is how this is going to go.
And we were ready to old school fisties over it too. So I would say to people, make your wishes known.
Yes, totally. It's never too soon. And you can change it.
Right.
You can have a plan and not go according to plan.
Because a bunch of people might die.
And Rachel, what you're saying too, like about you doing your set for your mom is David Kessler. He's a beautiful teacher and writer. He wrote a book called Creating Meaning? It's something like that. It came out recently. And it's talking about how we can create meaning with death.
Yeah.
And also, it's like a sidebar to that. We can't do that without the grief part. We can't go from like death to creating meaning. We have to kind of wade in the waters of grief. Like let yourself be in that process. Like we can't kind of fast track out of there.
Right. Yeah. Well, this, my whole show that I took to Scotland is called Beauty for Ashes. And it's about that journey with my mom from diagnosis till it ends at the beach with me spreading her ashes. And it's laugh out loud funny. And for me, it's funny that you said that, because for me, I felt like it gave it some meaning. It gave it some, it was, I think I said to you, it was for something. If I do this show, then it's a small piece of being for something. If I can tell people those stories and make them laugh, because how absurd people are when someone's dying. My family, complete and total wreck. I just had to write down what happened.
It's a show. I've noticed that it's person's dying that sad, and then what I've seen, what you see in death, and when people, especially the family, it's weird how personality traits I just never noticed, or they were so small, just got so amplified by losing somebody. I mean, how do you sit in that when that's going on? Because it's got to be going on around you sometime. If you're with somebody and you're doing it, and then the anger is, they can't yell at them. Do they ever turn on you? I mean, like, what's that like? Because I mean, being who you are, I get that you're just going to take it. Okay. I get you're getting no judgment on it, but there's got to be a point being from Jersey where
He's
you're
from
like,
Jersey.
I was going to say, with Jersey, you're like, hey.
Well, I can totally set a boundary. If someone's being ridiculous, I can set a boundary.
Got it.
And most of the time, people are never really taking it out on the doula. It's like interfamily stuff that's been going on for way before I got there.
Yeah.
And how partly my job is to listen and to hear. By just sitting, listening, and actually hearing it. And, maybe I'm reflecting some of that back, but because I'm not in the conflict of it all.
Right.
The Italian Jersey in me, there's a part of me that like wants to go through, the filing cabinet, and part I can't say that I don't love I don't want to say it. In that world, I don't love the drama.
Right.
But like, there's a whole part of me that, gossip. Yeah. Tell me. Yeah. And then it's just this, okay, this is in my normal life too. Just like, okay, well, what's going on here, Matthew? What do you need all this gossip for?
Right.
So, when I'm with someone who is dying, who is grieving, I just take a moment, Titus. This is really, really simple practice that I do before anything. Just have a moment. I'll close my eyes if I can, if it's safe to close my eyes. And I'll just remember what it is that I'm there for. And I'll ask the presence of, my guru, my teachers, Dracula, to be with me, to sit with me, to speak through me, to guide me, and to help me show the people in front of them that they are loved and that I love them, regardless of all of the gossip and the drama.
I would watch that show, The Real Death Doulas of New Jersey. 7 death doulas in New Jersey. Oh no, the fuck she didn't.
And then the bitchiness between them
Oh,
would be
I
awesome,
would
man.
love that show.
I took the guy through death way better than you.
Should have
did. You
seen
didn't
what
know
she
yet.
wore when she showed. Oh,
Hey, who's that?
So this is his name. Oh, look, he gave a little look.
He's like
His name is Pakal, but we just call him Pocket.
Pocket.
He's a hairless Mexican dog from Mexico.
Oh, Pocket.
Pocket.
I want you guys to know that you can go to madumat.com. I have one more thing I want to talk about, but you can go and employ his doula services. You can go and click on grief walking, and you can have a session with Matt and get a little deeper than what you even got today with whatever you're dealing with. But also, Matt is currently working on a project. Speaking of making your wishes known and planning ahead, this is something that is absolutely fascinating. You are currently raising money for something called the Omega House in your area.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. An Omega home is a home where people can go to die. That is not medicalized. So it will be a outside of a hospice. I don't want to talk about the ups and downs of hospice. Hospice actually has to be the one to, I believe, say that the patient is terminal.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we will move them into the home. And there's not an Omega home in New Jersey yet. They're kind of scattered all around the US. You can go on their website. And we provide support for the folks who are dying. And this probably isn't the best thing to say, but it's almost like an Airbnb for people who are dying.
That actually sounds great.
Can you have parties
Yeah,
in
that's
this
the
Airbnb?
best. I think that's the
though?
best way to put it. I mean, it makes it sound like, oh, okay, all right then.
It's I call it an Omega House, which is actually a frat name. Omega Home. So this is something that you guys can plan ahead. You don't have to be sick. You can, correct? Can they plan it before?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things like, and you can just do this wherever you can say, how do I want to die?
Yeah.
Like, where do you want to die? Like you were saying, grandma wanted to die at home.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't want to die in the hospital, and most people
Yes.
die in the hospital.
Yes. I just read statistics on this. The number one thing people say is, I don't want to die in a hospital, which my mom said to me as well. So I got her home.
Yep.
Very difficult, but I got her home. And
It was a kidnapping, was what it
but
was.
people do legal. It was all legal ish. You can learn anything on YouTube. But over 90% of people die in a hospital, and it's horrible.
The
and I
number's
know
high.
you don't want to say this, but I can say this. Hospice can be horrible. Not because of the human beings, but because of the bureaucracy. Hospitals can be absolutely horrific. And especially if you don't have an advocate, mom used to always say, they'll kill me if you're not with me. So this is a place that is set up to support you through the end of your life. This
Yep.
Omega home. And
Exactly.
there's
And
not,
there-
go ahead.
There's a Omega Home network that you can look and see if there's one in your area, if that is something that interests you. We're setting up one here in New Jersey. Where the website, it's not up yet, but hopefully it will be by the time this airs. Should be held.community.
Okay.
So the name of our foundation is Held Home. And within that, there's going to be a bunch of other things like community support, outreach. We're going to do death doula foundations trainings. We're going to do grief support. We'll do outreach, hopefully, with all walks of life in all communities. We have a pretty big vision for it, but ideally, we want to give people a place to go to die. And I knew the dog was going to bark.
Pocket.
And
he's actually his publicist. He's like, we got to go.
Wrap it up, Dad.
they're like, Matthew, it's dinner time.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Ours do the same thing.
5 o'clock.
Yeah,
It's 5 o'clock.
they start dancing. We have, and your uncle Philip is a part of the team. We have some great people, a lot of volunteers. I thought about, and I said to your uncle, I said, I'm an only child. I don't have kids.
Yeah.
My family is in the area, but not totally. They're kind of scattered. They have their own families.
Right.
So who is going to take care of me when I'm dying?
Right.
I know this just even in volunteering for hospice. Even some people die utterly alone.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Or some families, it's too much. Like maybe Rachel, it was just you, and you're like, oh, like you said, oh my God, I just need a break. Like I need someone to help me.
Yep.
So then we have these homes, because not everyone has a whole family system where,
Right.
Or they've died, or they've all passed away, or their kids have had. It's funny, the drama of humanity cracks me up, because it does. I'm really coming back to the love thing. Is like, it really, and I don't want it to sound trite. I really don't, but I get that we are at a place. Here's what I'm going to ask you. What do you think? How do you think our country deal? Because a lot of countries, different cultures, have a way of dealing with death that we don't. Are we getting better at it? I think we're getting better at it. We're starting to at least walk into it more.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think I don't really know. I'm kind of talking out of my ass. More people are having this conversation. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And probably like most things in this country, there's probably also a big division within it.
Yeah.
But like Rachel was saying, most people don't want to die in a hospital.
Right.
So we're at least talking about that. Like, where do you want to die? I want to die at home. I want to be surrounded by my family.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's a starting point.
And if you don't have that, you'll have an Omega house to go to.
Omega home.
Omega home. Sorry, not Omega house.
Kappa Omega.
Kappa Omega.
Are doctors and
Hopefully
nurses?
There's a ton of them.
Are they involved? Are doctors and nurses involved with an Omega home, or how does that?
Well, they have to. They're usually the people. Every state is a little bit different, and we're in the planning stage. We're actually doing a lot of the legal work of like what does this take? How many rooms can we have? We don't want to try to do it in the wrong neighborhood.
Right.
Because that's the other thing. It's like, oh yeah, this is great, but not in my neighborhood. Like the NIMBY kind of thing.
I don't think it doesn't have a thing. I don't think it has that thing. It's not like a drug rehab cure, but this isn't like this.
People are so freaked out by death. Oh yeah. Well, if you knew, people don't want to know that someone died in the home that they live in, and yet, hey, everybody, you all had someone most likely die where you live. Yeah. At least, maybe not in those walls, but in the ground underneath.
Yeah, or the house is on an Indian burial ground. Okay, relax. There's death all over.
Right. And so, I think that would be a thing. People would not want to know that the house across the street, people are dying every day. That would freak them out.
The home that I live in now might have had, we're kind of unclear, but the other owner might have died in this home. And someone was like, aren't you scared? And I was like, people been fucking dying since forever.
Exactly.
What am I? And my dog, Dracula died 2 feet from where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
and it's a beautiful. Like I get to like be in this space and just like feel his love and his presence.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you tell people, guys, I guarantee you, in the next 80 years, 8 billion people are going to die. 8 billion. So just relax. Everybody relax.
Where you get your Botox, somebody died. Where you
Yeah,
get a
exactly.
massage, somebody. Where you got your pedicure, there's dead bodies under there.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I remember when my mom was in the hospital, the lady next door, not one person visited. And she was at the end of her life. And I asked the nurse about the lady, and the nurse said, "Oh, honey, your mom, she's the outlier." She said, "We much more rarely see this. People coming in and out all day." She said, "That lady is what we typically deal with." And I said, "No one comes?" And she said, "No one comes." So Omega Home, you guys can go to Matt, MADHUMATT, if you want to contact him, or that website will be up by the time this airs as well, maybe. What is it again, Matt?
Held.community.
Held.community to learn more about this Omega Home and how you can donate to get this project off the ground, especially if you're in that Jersey, New York, anywhere within driving distance. This is in your best interest. And go to his website as well for the grief walking. You're going to be doing an online doula training in September, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm probably going to push that back because I'll be back in India in October.
Going back.
So,
how many times have you been?
You can't quit India, man.
I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 now.
Wow.
This is in 3 months. This is just a 3-week little pilgrimage. So
Very awesome.
It's just 3 weeks. That's all.
Can I tell you that?
Let me say, I'm super fortunate to be able to do that.
Oh, totally get it.
I just need to say that.
Man, I've been an awesome guest. Honestly, it's like at the time of by like that, I don't even know. And a cool dude. I really appreciate like a New Jersey death doula is like. Honestly, I'm going to pitch that show. I'm pitching that show. New Jersey Death Doula. I'm pitching that show.
With a dog named Dracula.
With a dog named Dracula. This is awesome.
Matt, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
Really, you guys are doing great work. So
you too, my brother. Thanks for helping me through.
Thanks, Matthew. I'll talk to you
bye, brother.
soon.